Hello world. Welcome back to Externalization Part 2, a continuation of externalizing my internal life experience that is rarely seen by the humans that sometimes come across this physical entity that I am manifesting for you. So, yes, I had come back. This is where we left off. I had come back from visiting my great-grandmother, and I told my friends about what had happened while I was there. And because they didn't believe me, I had to plug them with the experience. And so I facilitated us getting access to this experience, and we did it more than once, which was something different from how I had learned it at my great grandmother's place. So 2006 would be a very interesting year, because this is when most of the tripping happened. 2005 pretty much. It would be an interesting year. So what happened was we would then meet on the daily, and we would do it together, and no one ever did it alone. So we only did it when we were a group. It was myself, a friend whose name means joy or happiness, another friend whose name meant be grateful, Bokang. There was Njabulo, Bokang, myself. There was Victor. His name is self-explanatory. The other two I translated as I mentioned them. Can't recall yet if there was anyone else there, because the background music is sort of it's having more influence in my recollection than I would like. It's having more impact than I was expecting. I thought this was just going to be a background song, but it's okay. So the lads, my friends, childhood friends, I come back, I tell them about this experience. They don't believe me, so we start taking journeys. And when we take these journeys, the aim was to go laugh, right? Because that's how this experience had been framed for me, that this was something you could do to laugh, right? Let's just take a pause for a moment and analyze what it is to laugh, right? So laughter happens. We'll take a typical joke, for example. A joke will have one context where it's the obvious story that you are following, right? And then while this person tells the obvious story, they will simultaneously build another context below that one. And then they're gonna run them concurrently, build these two contexts concurrently, and then they will run at the same time. And then the point in the joke or in the recounting of the story where the person laughs, where the audience laughs, is when one line connects the two contexts that we had been building. Remember, we had one at the top, we had one at the bottom, and then we built them both together. And then we get this one line which collapses the two into one context, and the integration of information happening at such a rapid rate can only be processed through the process that we call laughter. Now, this is comedic laughter, as opposed to someone tickling your feet or tickling your armpits if you're ticklish, right? This is the cognitive laughter, and this is the kind of laughter that we were pursuing with this activity. And so we went on our adventures and we laughed, and it was awesome to laugh, right? But something odd started happening. We would just laugh and not give justifications for laughing, right? And when we did not give these justifications, it's because it wasn't necessary, and the laughter was just overwhelming, because the context was, I am alive. That's the overall context that I've always been familiar with, that I've always known, right? That's the normal process that we're born into. And now I do it, right? And when I do it, I start running another process, or I become aware. It's like doing it is the punchline that makes me aware of all the other contexts that were running concurrently with me being alive. Turns out the past and the future run concurrently in the present, but that's a topic for another day. It'll be too convoluted for the purposes of externalization. So yeah, we took the trips. Something interesting happened. Victor had a justification. He would laugh, and each time whoever was sitting next to him, he'd point to their forehead and say, ha 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 ha, spider head. And I'd be like, what is this man seeing? Because I was not seeing any spider heads. All that would happen would be, I could feel and hear the air buzz against my eardrum, and every vibration that is occurring within the body was as intense as being able to feel the air pulsate against your eardrum without any particular sound, just feeling the ether, so to speak, hearing the ether. And it makes it such that the rest of the words that come sound like they have an echo, right? So when I was doing externalization part 1, and I attempted to make sound simulations for you of the things I may have come across during the experience, I made sounds like zoo, 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 but most of those were like echoes. It would be maybe like a zzz sound, but then the zzz would have an echo, so it would be zzz. And then if I said something like ha 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 ha, it was like I was in an echo chamber, but the echo chamber was my very being. That's why I couldn't understand why this guy was looking at other people and seeing spider heads. I'm like, dude, how? But I didn't ask him. I was just curious. So I decided that on the next session that we were gonna have, I was gonna observe what it was the sled was doing, right? So for the next day, I observe. And remember the technique I outlined at the beginning at externalization part 1. I said when we inhaled the aromatic components that were soaked in a stocking, we would only take like one inhalation and pass. This is how I was taught, right, by my sister's friend and her cousins who brought the experience to us, who transmitted the experience to us. This is how it was transmitted to me. And when I had shared the protocol with my friend, initially the first few experiences we did exactly the same way. Not the first few experiences, the first experience I can say for sure. We did exactly the same way that I had done it at my great grandmother's place. But now we were, how do I put this? Now when I observed the technique that was making Victor see these spider heads in people, I noticed that he would hyperventilate on the thing, as opposed to saying once. he'd inhale, exhale rapidly so, and yeah, as a result, he saw what he saw, which was different from what I had been seeing all along, being the inceptor of the experience, for lack of a better word. So yeah, it was interesting to find out that there's more within the experience through the suggestion of the remarks my friend made as he underwent his own experience. Let's take a pause for a bit, we'll come back. So you noticed that I had my own trip going, right? I had my own life happening. I noticed something externally, how someone else was doing it, and I observed the technique and I replicated the technique. That's pretty much life and learning in life. It's just that at that time I learned how to replicate a state of mind which the host couldn't describe beyond spider head. And as you'll discover, he was no wordsmith. Victor was just overwhelmed by the sensations of the experience and the perception, the thing that he saw. So I'm going to explain what he saw. So I did do it the way he had done it, right? I implemented the technique that I had observed from him. So from childhood, this thing of learning by observing from others has always been a thing for me. Just a quick side story. When we were children, I was playing with one of my friends, Mtutuzi, and this is even before the current time we are in, because we are currently in 2005, but this happened before that, many years before that. So we're playing there with Mtutuzi, the sun is up, it's awesome, we're kids, man, we're having fun. And all of a sudden these clouds start rolling in, and before they reach where we are, you know, when you can see the sun where you are playing and the clouds as they roll in, we could see the clouds rolling in, and we knew, like, hey bruh, I think we're gonna have to call it a day, because, you know, once the rain starts, my mom doesn't allow me to play in the rain like that. So, you know, it is what it is. Game over. Then my friend says to me, no X, did you know? So Mtutuzi's surname is Mnisi, is Simelani. The clan name for the Simelanis is Mnisi, which means rain bringer, right? Now we are kids at this point. So Mtutuzi, descendant of the rain bringers, Mnisi, says to me, did you know that we can actually tell the rain to go away, bruh, so that we can continue playing? Now, I'm familiar with kids doing rain, go away type songs, right? But that type of experience usually, it's easy to attribute the phenomena to the fact that there were so many of you. There's so many variables at play. One would not necessarily be able to learn how exactly they had done what they had done as a group. So if an individual who participated as a member of a group, then later on, upon reflecting on what the group was able to achieve, they would not be able to analyze sufficiently. Okay, it might take them longer. They could analyze it, it just might take longer. So Mtutuzi says to me, dude, we can tell the rain to go away. I'm like, bad, let's do it. So we do it. We tell the rain to go away, the rain goes away, we continue playing, and we call it a day, and I forget about this experience. right? But it turns out I had learned how to control rain at that moment, because later on I would practice. We'll get to this once we cover 2015, when we were at Grahamstown at Rhodes University, where I started playing with what I called at the time magical weather, which was just really light rain. Some people call it mystical. I prefer calling it magical weather. So yeah, that technique that I would later use at Rhodes University in 2015, which was pretty much more than 10 years later, more than 20 years later, close to 20 years later maybe. No, I wasn't even 2015. So yeah, close to like 20 years. Or was I? Oh, I think I was. Yeah. So it's pretty close to 20 years. It's not 20 years exactly. Yeah. So back to the story. I do the technique like Victor does, right? Back to the trip. All stories are trips, mate. So I do the technique. I hyperventilate on the thing, and it becomes like super intense. My tongue feels stuck to the stocking, and I'm like, okay, this is weird, but okay. It is what it is. Yeah. So when I before, what would happen is we would do like one inhalation, and the visual experience, the visual component would change. So would the auditory component, and your sense of space, that would also change, such that the sense of space changed such that you sort of, I guess, melted into everything, but it wasn't obvious that you had melted into everything. Ooh, mosquitoes. How did you survive, dude? Got it. Awesome. Yeah. So, I hyperventilated on the thing, and I passed out essentially. Closed my eyes, saw a couple of things. Like when I say I saw a couple of things, it would literally be glimpses of the future sometimes. It's just that I'm repeating this. My apologies if you had watched part 1 in full. I'm just gonna make it brief so that I'll be able to build on it. Yeah, so okay, let's just not repeat it then. It's fine. What I saw was, you see, when I said that the past and the future are both present in the now, like they are both here now. Yeah. From this moment now, you may access any point in the future. You may access it as an idea, right, as a concept. But depending on how good you are at sorry about that. There's some. There we go. These mosquitoes be flying too freely, man. Pardon. Yeah. So pardon the mosquito murder show. Back to the narrative. Where was I? Oh yeah. So I hyperventilated on the thing, closed my eyes, as in passed out, and then I don't know for how long I was passed out, but the duration of these experiences would tend to be long. For example, earlier on during the day, I had a bowl, like a bong hit. At the time when I was having these experiences with my friends around 2005, I had no idea what even a bong was, let alone the high of a bong. Even though we were doing this experience, I wasn't even familiar with marijuana at this point. The only thing I had done as far as a psychoactive or a mind-altering substance was alcohol. And the alcohol I had gotten is like traditional sorghum beer. My grandmama had brewed some, and I asked, because I was like, hey yo, I know I'm a kid, I've been seeing the old people do this thing they call drunk, and for the first time we have actually brewed booze here at home. So it's not like I'm asking y'all to go buy me a quart or something. Can you just pour a lead some, please? I want to experience drunkenness. But I didn't put it exactly like that. I just asked. And they were like, you might get drunk. And I was like, it's okay. I'm good. Just pour the thing. And so they poured. And yeah, so that was, and even then I didn't get drunk. I just got a bit woozy. But I wasn't sure if I was woozy because so my grandma took a little bucket and she poured probably like about maybe 3 cups, if I'm to estimate it now, about three cupfuls of this sorghum beer. And I sat down on my skateboard. I had a cruiser, those small cruisers from back in the day. When I was born, it was somehow in the family. I don't know who it belonged to. Maybe my grandma had brought it from her job as a kitchen girl, as we used to call them back in the day, as a maid, pretty much. So the pro of being a maid in the 90s, the pro to the kid of the person who was employed as a maid, was that sometimes your guardian is gonna come back with some pretty dope things for you which you would not otherwise be able to afford. So the skateboard was part of that. There were also books, Jane and Jill, Noddy, and all those things. These were books I read that formed my mind in a different way than most of the people I grew up around who had not been exposed to them. But I wasn't aware at that time. All right, so let's continue then. So I do Victor's technique. It does something different. Instead of me seeing a hyper enhanced version of reality, an augmentation, an amplification of reality as I had been doing when I was doing it before, I now went elsewhere. I don't know where I went. I wasn't even aware I went elsewhere. What I remember was it was buzzing. Everything was buzzing louder than it had ever buzzed before. And then I would open my eyes and maybe I'd be in a room like the current room I'm in right now, with the Follow Your Dreams sticker by the background. Now, I wouldn't know why I'm here. I wouldn't know whose room this is. I wouldn't even know that I am in my body as an adult, because it felt weird. It felt different. In 2015, I came across psychedelics, and that changed how I am within my body, like how I recognize my being within the body, as opposed to at this time, like 2005, when we were doing these trip series, these trip experiences with my friends, and what you find there is that pardon, okay, gonna lose my train of thought now. Back to 2006. Oh yeah, so I went into moments of the future, and because I lacked the context that comes with actually physically going to the future by like going through normal time, so you can jump to any point in time, and jump to the future. Not really interested in jumping to the past, unless if I'm doing it externally, like some high intensity lighter race, that type of setup. But as far as like internal interdimensional space travel, I prefer okay, again, tangents. These are two thoughts so far in these 25 minutes. There's two thoughts that have sort of two tangents that went too far away for me to be able to bring back to the circle. That's essentially the process that you've been watching. A thought, as I am expounding it or sharing it or verbalizing it, as I'm doing that, another thought comes, and then I look at that thought while my body finishes off saying the current thought. And then when I finish this thought, then because I've seen the thought that was forming as a tangent, I can now grab it and tie it into the current context. But then sometimes the tangent becomes so exciting that it pulls all of my attention from the current thought, which my body is currently executing, and I end up being pulled towards the thought that's forming. And then when you enter that thought fully without having a foothold in the thought that led to the tangent forming, then it's the same as traveling to the future. You can exist inside of that thought, but it'll be confusing. So that's why I keep on saying, oh, where was I? Because I can feel when if the tangent has drawn me too far away from the source of the tangent, from the circle, from the initial sphere. These are abstract ideal spheres to just describe the mechanisms of my cognition. Okay, so I see this glimpse of the future. So that's to say, it's of no significance for me to describe a moment of confusion where I saw a moment in the future without context, right? So we'll proceed to when I return back into the same reality my friends were in. So I passed out and then I woke up again. When I woke up and I looked at my friend, the one who was sitting next to me, not the one who's always laughing and pointing at us and saying, "Oh, a spider head." I looked at the person sitting next to me, and when I looked at their forehead, I could see very thin threads that they were translucent yet shiny, small enough to be spider webs, and they had formed this diamond pattern over his forehead. And so I was like, oh, that's what Victor was trying to describe when he was saying spider head. He should have said, okay, so I'm gonna put the literal words he used, because he said this in Zulu. He would laugh and say, ha ha ha, ngenhloko ye spider, as in you have a spider head. And I'd be like, oh dude, what do you mean? But after doing it the way he does it, visiting wherever I visited, when I came back, I could see what he saw, which he was ineptly describing as a spider head. Because for me, I was freaky. I was expecting to see 8 eyes, man. 8 eyes, those pincers and everything else we associate with spiders. But that's not what happened. Instead, I saw a web on the forehead of the person I was sitting next to, right? Fast forward again to 2017. I would see this thin thread again, but not on someone's forehead. I saw the thin thread as my aura, as the energy field that surrounds me. So an aura can be used to describe the air around a person, like the vibe, the general vibe of a person. But then there's also I don't know what it's made of, so I can't really say per se what it's made of. I can throw around some suspicions, but that's just gonna divert this whole video. But essentially what I saw was how every magnet has a magnetic field. I saw my aura in its capacity as my magnetic field, which I could expand and contract at will. I can still do that. There's a video, and the initial video where I spoke about Polybius, the first time I mentioned General Polybius, I said that I am a higher form of entity, and Google would be a higher form of entity if they could control my aura the way I can control my aura, because that's what makes me a higher form of entity. So that's to say, this is me like theorizing when I'm saying it's like the magnetic aspect. So a human being obviously is a biochemical, electrical being, right? And the electricity is the firing of the neurons, and wherever we have electricity we always have magnetism, because electromagnetism, they always go together. So by virtue of my brain and my senses and by virtue of my being, I am electricity incarnate. And this electricity has a magnetic field. This magnetic field is what the ancients sometimes called aura, but the aura is not limited to this. So when I saw the aura, it was during a Hoffman psychosis that I had induced. My first Hoffman psychosis happened after I had met Dimitri, dimethyltryptamine. And I met Dimitri, I think a week later I met Lucy, and then Lucy induced the Hoffman psychosis for around 15 hours. And what the Hoffman psychosis allowed me to do, besides expanding my frame of consciousness into psychedelic space in a gradual sense, as opposed to what Dimitri had done, because Dimitri just he sends you up there, mate. He doesn't ask questions. He just sends you up there. There's no getting you used to it, like, yo, we're gonna increase your frequency by 15%. How you feeling with the 15%? Do you want to go some more? Nah, that's not Dimitri. Dimitri just sends you to like, yeah, just sends you. Whereas the Hoffman psychosis I was in was more gradual. So through the Hoffman psychosis, I was able to see elements of my experience, to find the laughter again, to see elements of my experience which have always been there, but which I wasn't able to interact with because I wasn't able to perceive them. And so once I perceived my aura as this translucent string, I was then able to contract. And at the time during the experience, I couldn't like contract it. Nah, at that time, it was just expanded and it stayed in that expansive state. It's just that I could feel people bumping into my aura. You know, when you're in a line at the bank or ATM or wherever you find yourself in a line, and the person behind you is standing too close. If they stand too close and you feel like you can feel them breathing on your neck, yeah, that's what I can do now with my aura. Before, I couldn't even do that. The aura was just an idea. Part of this externalization process is just to have the whole story down, externalized, so that I can just point people to it, so that we can spend the remainder of our time in this reality exploring, like pursuing the funnies in the logical conclusions, right? Continuing the journey of the school of life. So having to retell these elements to people who might not necessarily be called to understand what it is that I understand. Oh, by the way, I am neurodivergent, if you haven't noticed by now. But my neurodivergence doesn't have a certificate. I don't have a medical diagnosis to back it up for you. The only way I know I'm neurodivergent is because all the people who've got confirmations for their neurodivergence, not all of them, but the ones I've come across, the traits that they share, I usually have most of those. For example, this externalization process that I'm undergoing now is my solution to the urge to share a similar story when as a way to relate to someone. So something that's very typical of neurodivergent individuals is not only do I hear you when you tell me a story, I want to tell you a story back to show you how deeply I hear you, right? And I believe that's how we grow. Like, you share your story, I share my story, and then you respond to me sharing my story by sharing another story, and then it just keeps on going, as opposed to you doing what neurotypicals do, which is telling me a story and then asking me a very linear take, like asking for a linear take on it. You understand? When you were telling me this story, I probably was in that reality. Like, I visited that dimension because I can travel astrally during conversations. That's what these neurodivergent individuals have been doing. Y'all just think they're imagining. Nah, fam, I Magi Nation, right? I Magi Nation. Do you understand? So, neurodivergent individuals are part of the I Magi Nation. I'm not saying they're in your imagination, my friend. I'm saying they are Magi's, and they're part of my nation. But they don't know that most of the time. I was just mentioning the neurodivergence so that you understand, in case you were suspecting by now. I think we've gotten to enough content that you should have been suspecting. So, my neurodivergence is not boxed into a medical diagnosis, and I have been building it to the point where it rivals the states of shamans of old. I reckon all neurodivergence is a form of shamanism, with the neurodivergent individual holding on to only as much as their culture has prepared them to handle, right? And the Western culture is very poor when it comes to spiritual content. Their Christianity is dry and it lacks spirit. It is just words on a page, and they don't have anything else besides Christianity. There are other forms that are destructive. It's rock, it's... what else? Actually, not even rock is theirs. What is... hey, man. Okay, rock might... okay, fine. Let us leave the nuances of Western society to the Westerners. Return back to the plot. So, that's how I saw the spider head. When I went to the other place where I saw glimpses of the future, that's what is typically called a breakthrough today in the psychonaut community of usually Dimitri uses dimethyltryptamine. And Dimitri, people who've met Dimitri aim to achieve a breakthrough. So it's like what is possible to achieve, like the visuals that I was mainly spending my time on during the Laughter Trip series. Those visuals, how do I put this? Those visuals are what DMT enthusiasts would consider a sub breakthrough trip. And then breaking through is losing complete touch with this reality such that you go into another one. So I then repeated this technique, Victor's technique, and when I repeated Victor's technique, this time we had not been doing it inside of the house of one of the participants. We actually went out to an open field and we went out to an open field, and at the field we all had our own stocking this time, and so everybody was just inhaling at any rate they could that they wanted. And I did so much I blacked out. This time I didn't see glimpses of the future or things like that. It was just black, just void, endless, infinite void. And I was there, aware, right? I had no form within this void. It was as though I was the void, and yet I was not the void, for I was that which was aware that it was within the void, right? So I spend my time within the void. I get used to it, and as soon as I get used to being within the void, even though I didn't have a physical form, my awareness was localized within a certain portion of that seemingly infinite void. For I felt like I could, okay, this was, so at first it was just void, né? I was just awareness. I knew that I am within the void. I tried to experience the void the same way I experience this reality through my physical body, but I realized within the void I had no body. I just was awareness. So I was pure spirit. I was pure awareness. For awareness is spirit, right? So the part about being pure void, or just being in the void, is that I could still remember life as this form. I could still remember that I have once lived before with a body, and this body had memories, and this body had aspirations, and that body seemed so far at that time. And not only did it seem far, the void was peaceful. Like, the void was, my being was, all was, and it was enough in its being. There was no striving for object A. There was no attempting to achieve movement or local, like the very being in itself within the void was sufficient, such that my previous life felt like a you remember a few minutes ago, about 10 I think, when I was explaining how new thoughts form as tangents that we have to tie into the original sphere of thought or circle of ideas that brought about the tangent, right? The void felt like there were no tangents. There could be no tangents. Yes, I had thought or caring that the tangents were pretty much my memories of existing as a different form, as in a form with a corporeal body, of existing as awareness, as spirit wearing a body. So right now I'm spirit, but I'm wearing a body, right? When I was in the void, I was just spirit, and I just was, and I was blissful and peaceful. But scary, because I was pretty sure I was dead, because I remembered the old life with the body, and I no longer had a body now, right? So yeah, I then wake up with like the ground horizontal to my face. So turns out I had fallen to the side of my face during the blackout. When I woke up, there were other people who were initially not there when the trip started. And the part that really stuck with me, before I came back, I forgot to mention, so within the void, a rectangular shape with a circle appended at one end, but that's just me simplifying it so that you get the overall view of the thing. It was like two shapes, a rectangle and a circle, but the circle was giving carnival vibes. The whole thing, the whole shape, the whole fractal was it was a fractal. The whole fractal was giving carnival vibes. So the two shapes, when you zoom, it's like, hey man, you've seen fractals, fam. If you haven't seen fractals, Google the Mandelbrot set, just Google fractals. Go here on YouTube. You don't even need to Google it. Just search fractals. So I saw fractals for the first time before I had come across the notion of fractals. If I'd come across the word to describe them as fractals, before I'd come across the idea of fractals, before I'd even seen mathematicians were not obsessed per se, but were aware of their existence, right? So within the void, this fractal from a distance comes through. It has music. The music sounds like carnival theme music. And as the fractal now exists within the void is no longer void. And I start to feel the localized awareness that I am gradually drift back, drift towards the fractal thing that was appearing. So this rectangular fractal, the closer I drifted towards it, because I didn't have a body, I couldn't really propel myself towards it. It's just like it emerged from the great distance and it slowly came at its pace, and I just was and awaiting it, not really awaiting it, just being in that moment of being, yet fully aware that this fractal was approaching, and I did desire it to approach. And when it approached enough that the localized awareness that I am was able to touch it, then upon touching it with my spirit, I found myself wearing this body again. So I manifested as Xolani Mabhula again in this frame. When I was in the void, I could have been anyone. Yes, I was still me, in the sense that when I recalled my time before the void, the memories I could access with these corporeal forms, with these bodies. So I guess we can say, by virtue of that, the spirit that I was in the void was the spirit of Xolani, right? It could not have been any other spirit, like I almost made it out to seem. Apologies for that. So, did I die? Yes and no. And the part that really annoyed me was that if I had physically died, this was what made this experience I'm describing now to be the last trip that I took from this particular gateway, whose name I have not mentioned and will not mention, to protect the innocent. If for whatever reason you have to understand this knowledge, just reach out to me. I can teach you without you having to take any substances. And I also have a gift where the substance I take, if I explain it to you whilst I'm still in it, I can get you to experience it without you actually taking the drug that I would have taken. So yeah, consider that instead of trying to find the thing that we were tripping on, the thing that we were doing when we were doing it, as I've been describing it. So, what do I mean when I say I did die and I didn't die at the same time? Well, I didn't die in the sense that I'm here now recounting this tale for you, but I did die in the sense that to be beyond this body permanently so is what death is. So for a moment I had a little death. It wasn't an orgasm like the French would say, but yes, I had a little moment of death. And I went back home, still 2005. The thing that pissed me off, that made me not to do it again, was none of my friends noticed that I had passed out. Like, the entire time I was gone, the entire time I was freaking out in the void, wondering if I'm dead or not, contemplating my previous past life, realizing, it was a pretty nice life, you know. Did end in a weird way, you know, in the middle of a field with a stalking boy passed out next to his, okay, I assumed the lads were gonna be the ones reporting, but he came. I did not die. I just got insight into the nature of death. Let's move on to 2006. 2006, something interesting happened. Another first. So we had a trip for the first time to the Eastern Cape with my sister. So I had said, like, as I said in Externalization part 1, I grew up in Katlehong, which is in South Africa, and in Gauteng, the province of Gauteng, or the state of Gauteng, and the city of Johannesburg in the East Rand, pretty much a couple of hours from Johannesburg. So we had spent most of our lives there. The 10 years that I mentioned, I described in the previous video from 95 to 2000, and the only trips that I had taken were trips to my great-grandmother's house, which was like a 30-minute, 45-minute taxi ride, depending on the route, and the occasional trip to town. But essentially, there had been no like great trips. And growing up in South Africa, where we used to have a land act. So if you remember, the colonizers came, they tried to start their European enterprises. They didn't work because there was no cheap labor for them to exploit, because that's what those systems are based on. Inherently, they're based on slaves. It's just that the slaves were now trying to be, because the colonizers who came here were criminals and vandals and pretty much the worst of European society, with minor exceptions, but most of them were just hooligans that they sent because they were an expendable commodity. Who's gonna miss a hooligan? So the colonizers, upon failure to establish industry in South Africa, this is what they did. They created the Land Act, which took all the good pieces of land which the natives owned, the soil that was fertile, and the ancestral lands, the knowledge, the keys, the ancient keys. These keys, I uncovered some of them like just this past month in January. And the Land Act played a huge role in disrupting the flow of information amongst the natives. So they first moved the natives around, sent them to the worst pieces of land they could find, and then kept the good land for themselves, and then offered jobs to the natives who were now hungry and displaced, had lost their livestock, were pretty much starving due to legislation created by the colonizers, who today think that their wealth is somehow unrelated to the rape and pillaging of my ancestors. Alas, let us proceed. So, I had grown up in Katlehong, right? And due to the reason I was painting out that Land Act thing, they grouped, because divide and conquer is the colonizers' way of life. They divided Azanians, South Africans, the people of the Apsu, the Abantu of the Apsu, the soul of Ntu, of the deep waters where Enki created. Okay, we'll get to that, and here's just some teasers in Yananja for once we get to the current year. So I am from South Africa, like I said, from Katlehong. K1, salute, Estrand 1432. Yeah. So Katlehong is a township. What a township is essentially a makeshift village that was built around the workplaces. First things first, townships were never meant to be permanent, because the nature of the industries that were happening here, like mining, is that eventually either the vein that you found is gonna run out, and once the vein runs out, then the population of miners is gonna decrease, which then affects the service providers who make up the rest of the town. That's why fundamentally the idea of a town built around industry, not a town established for the sake of being established, but a town that arises as a consequence of a particular industry, like mining in this case. Historically, it wasn't meant to be permanent. But yeah, Gauteng literally means El Dorado, bruh. If you translate the word Gauteng, the Sotho word Gauteng means at the gold, right? El Dorado is just saying the city of gold, but in the Sotho word that we use for my province, for my state where I stay, it's literally El Dorado. It's Gauteng, the gold, at the place of gold, the gold. So yeah, if the Anunnaki were obsessed with gold, they were here, fam. If the Anunnaki did things and they left descendants, we are them. Then too. So Andu, hey, okay, we'll come back to this in 20 when we cover the 2020 the 2025 video, essentially, because that's when clarity about this came. So for now, let's continue building the context. The trip to Mount Fletcher, the reason it's interesting is, pardon, last time I'm doing this now. Let's finish off the background. So the colonizers separated the different ethnic groups within South Africa and gave them what they called homelands, which was pretty much giving them bad land after they had forcefully taken the good land. Cool. Then these colonizers, what they did, the consequence, when you fast forward, later on to the time when I'm existing, when I am born. So part of the thing I didn't describe, from 2001, my course, the thing I didn't describe was I said it was the last time. Clearly it wasn't. One last time. Otherwise I'm gonna have to cancel this if it happens again, because we have to keep a narrative that makes this worth listening to, even if it's in the background, right? So my apologies, let us proceed. So the homelands that you would get were grouped by ethnicity, by ethnic group. So you have Xhosa homelands, Zulu homelands, Sotho homelands, and such and such. So there's a reason I'm not going into the history of what they called our land once they divided us. It's not necessary. It's just propaganda at this point, right? So nonetheless, they separated the different tribes into different groups, and then in city areas like Johannesburg, so in townships that would arise in city areas like Johannesburg, you would get something which didn't exist in most of the country. You'd get a mixture of tribes. Prior to the colonizers meddling with our social dynamics, even though we weren't really intermingling in the sense of the internet, we were not actively violent towards each other. There were interactions amongst the Kwekam and the Xhosa, for example. Or is the word Tiko? Tiko is not a Xhosa word. It's a Kwekam word that means God. So Xhosa people can say, let's just leave it there. Tiko is a Kwekam word for God, and the fact that Xhosa people call God Tiko amongst other names means there was enough cultural exchange amongst the Kwekam and the Xhosa that they were able to exchange ideas like this. Another way to show you that these people were interacting would be traditional healers, but I think we'll have to save that for a separate video. Just please remind me on the comment area here if I don't make that video within, say, 2 weeks. Okay, so the cities then became places where you'll find multiple tribes, and then these tribes all came from certain homelands which had been declared or demarcated by the colonizers. So the colonizers, pardon to the white people who might be watching this unawares. So okay. So each school holiday, you'd have this tradition in South Africa, especially like from, I don't know when it stopped. I think people are still doing it even now. So there's a tradition in South Africa where during holidays, during school vacations, you will find a lot of traffic heading to different parts of the country. But it's people pretty much returning to their homelands as the colonizers had designated them. But the true homelands, no one really knows anymore because it was lost to us. I mean, like, there's memories that are hidden in a tree somewhere in a land where black people were displaced, and now only corn grows there, and that tree that had been passing down information for generations is gone because a greedy colonizer who couldn't adapt to the current system of peace sought to bring the poison that had sent them away from home to us, unknowingly so, by trying to be the lords that they had left behind. Okay, lest I digress. So, the trip to Mount Fletcher then was, so growing up, we always would hear people saying they are going to their homelands. This was weird because I was born in Gauteng. I was born in the township of Sunrise in the city of Gold in Gauteng, in a neighborhood called Katlehong in the East Rand. And so usually homeland meant the place where you were born, where you would go back to once you had left this place where you were for school or for work. So most of the people in Gauteng would go at one vacation or another to another province. So this type of tripping was normal. Many people were tripping like this. They were even given names like the returners, amagoduka, or the goers, the ones who go home. And I'm going home now, so amagoduka. In my primary school, it even became a point that the essays that we would write the essays we would write upon returning from school holidays would typically be, tell us what you did emakhaya. And that's when I had to learn like creative writing, cause hey man, I've been here, dog. I ain't never taken the trip there. I've been here, and y'all want me to talk about a trip I hadn't taken? Yeah, so I imagination, been with the nation. So okay, so that's the context within which the trip to Mount Fletcher occurs. So we noticed as children, my sister and I, my sister was 4 years older than me, so we noticed that here at home we've never been offered the opportunity to visit like the homelands. Like, I understand being able to visit my great-grandmother who lived like 30 minutes away, and typically people who would go to homelands would be going to visit the ancients, the living ancients. So I had a living ancient here in Gauteng, my great-grandmother, my grandmother. My ancients were here, and I was with them, I saw them, I consulted with them. We still wanted the experience though, because the FOMO from school was too much. I just wanted to be able to write honestly once on an essay upon returning from school holidays. At least have some some true material to reference, right? That's the meta potion right there. I'll divulge some details at some point, but for now, just be aware, we do have a meta potion that does many wonderful things. So yes, so when we asked, we were wondering, how is it that other kids go to Emakaya, they go to their homelands, and we've never been offered that opportunity? And my sister was the one spearheading the conversation because she was a bit older and I wasn't really there for it, but she managed to convince the family, my grandma, something that we would not have done had we known the history that had led to the separation that made it such that we could not even go visit the Eastern Cape, right? But we pushed it and we forced it, and we were allowed for the first time during the December school vacation break, which is like summer vacation for South Africans because Southern Hemisphere. So for summer vacation, we went to Eastern Cape and it was awesome. I had never been exposed to just like open, vast space like that. Just like mountains on mountains on mountains. The population density is so small that like certain functions within the human body are enhanced as a result, or as a side effect. I'm not sure if it's a result or a side effect, like if it's the sole result or just one of the things that happen. But nonetheless, we asked for it. The reason I'm saying we're not gonna ask if we knew the truth, just to summarize it in a minute or so, my gran was forcefully married at 15 years old in a trafficking practice that was called ukutwala, which is something like you can put on a head. So how do I explain utwala? Yeah, it's pretty much to lift the weight. Ukutwala, you lift the weight. Usually with the head, but you can lift the weights with anything. Ne? So my gran at around 15, 16, she was in grade 9. She was abducted by the man who would later become my grandfather, essentially. He didn't do it himself. He sent people. Like, there was a way this thing was done traditionally, and that's how they did it. So they pretty much forced grandmama to marry, and yeah, that could not have been pleasant. Grandpa was in the military at some point for many years, and when he came back, I don't know if he went to the military already indulging in marijuana, but when he came back, he was definitely indulging in marijuana. Maybe as a self-treatment for depression, or it may have been that the marijuana for depression, for post-traumatic stress disorder, or it may be that the marijuana was the cause of his psychosis. But there was a phase where grandpa had psychosis. I didn't know the man. Apparently, I'm a spitting image of him, down to the dreadlocks. When I go to Eastern Cape and people who saw Grandpa when he was still alive see me, they'd be like, umzukulwane ne? And I'm like, yeah. But I never met him. They're like, nah. Like you look like the nigga. Like already at home, our genes are strong, I guess. Like we have dominant alleles, because usually the traits from home will express in a child more often than the traits from the other person who's married into or who's bred into my family. Yeah. So, pretty much Grandpa's family abducts my grandma. Then processes are undergone. Grandma's married to his kidnapper, and she's forced to drop out of school, like grade 9, because she's married now. And yeah, she drops out of school. Grandpa does some weird things. When I say Grandpa does some weird things, I mean not that he does some weird things in the sense that like I don't know exactly what he did, because it's so traumatizing to his children, my uncles, that they've never spoken about it. All I know is it was traumatic for them to grow up around him, because they are traumatized enough that we can't talk about him. So I know nothing about Gramps, even though I'm a spitting image of him, right? The one thing I do know is he smoked weed and he loved weed. And to that point, we'll just rewind a bit. I don't know if I mentioned this in Externalization Part 1, but there was a time when every birthday celebration we did at home, we did not do like fancy parties. We just did a small dinner with the birthday cake, the family, and some encouraging words for the growing person. And then if the finances allowed, maybe a small gift here and there. Dig? That was a typical birthday. Here's the weird thing though about my birthdays growing up. The weird thing is that they would sing, yes, we'd do all the niceties of the birthday ritual, and then when it came to giving me advice, mind you, we're giving a 4-year-old advice, giving a 5-year-old advice, giving a 7-year-old advice, giving an 8-year-old advice, they'd be like to me, yeah, ukule, grow up, keep on growing, be good, be obedient, listen to the parents, typical stuff. And then at the end, they'd be like, don't use weed. Which was weird, because I didn't even know what weed was. Like, at that time, I had no idea what weed was. For many years, weed to me was this forbidden thing that I am reminded about at every birthday. No, there were birthdays when I didn't get gifts, but I got the weed talk. This was before even the first puff. It was, hey, batike. So this is to further add when I say that Grandpa traumatized them. So they attributed whatever it was that Grandpa was doing to the weed, right? Rightly so, wrongly so, I don't know, because I don't know what Grandpa did. So can't really say anything on it, except to say it is, like it happened. No? So Grandma, when she left, I don't know how she left, but I think she escaped. like the type of escapes people do when they're running away from abusers. Remember initially how she even got married into this family. She was abducted by people approved by the family who sought to make their older son happy. I don't know how older my grandpa was than grandmama, but he was definitely older. So yeah, that's the messed up like context that starts the lives of the people who would raise me. You dig? And we haven't even got you. Hey fam. Yeah, I've got a lot to tell you, man. I've got a lot to tell you, but just bear with it. It's all good. I'm still alive. I can crack a smile. I can laugh from time to time, and reality is still interesting and intriguing. So it all worked out ultimately. Yeah, so grandma was abducted by my grandpa's family, forcefully married. Then she escaped later on. When she escaped, she already had children. She left some of them with grandpa's family, and that's the family my sister and I were fighting to go visit in 2006, because they were in Eastern Cape, and we've been wanting to take a trip like across the province, just like many people who go home Abaye Makaya are doing. We also wanted to do that, so we argued, but we pushed for it, and it was approved, and so we went. Grandma didn't even come. She just sent us to the taxi. I could see the pain, but I didn't understand why there was pain, because at this time, even the fact that she had been trafficked into marriage, do you understand the trauma of my existence being a constant reminder that you at grade 9 with like good marks at school, showing promise, could have become anything, were abducted and taken into a family forcefully and married into it, and then your husband, due to, as they claim, the marijuana, or as I suspect, the post-traumatic stress disorder that comes with being part of the military, I reckon that's why he was acting out. I reckon the marijuana actually helped mellow him out. But again, people will say what people will say. I don't know what happened. Here's the other thing. If he smoked as much as I'm now smoking, and he had children, yeah, I can see why that was a bad situation for the children. Because I have explored. So the reason I now think in tangents, is because of weed. You smoke? As I was pulling, I had thoughts happening, right? But when I hold in the smoke, I must now acknowledge that this is happening. I'm doing it. And the doing of it is gonna start a different line of thought parallel to the thought that was already running, right? The tangent. And then how you make your high useful is that you connect the tangent back into the original circle. So the initial thought that produces the tangent, you throw it back. So yeah, the reason I had to do that, to function this way mentally, is because I got addicted to the weed, man. I got addicted to the weed. It's not addictive. You can just stop anytime. Not if you're neurodivergent like I am, fam. That advice is for neurotypical people. For neurodivergent individuals, I found a way to cope within the addiction. Yeah, so we're just taking really long breaks now whenever possible, The last long break I took was around 7-8 months, and it's been a year and some months since I broke that break. So I'm due for another break, or an upgrade in the grades of ganja that I inhale. So that's an interesting dream to pursue, upgrading the ganja. So we'll pursue that. So we go to Eastern Cape, and it's awesome. It's pretty much fantastical. It's a fantastical trip. It's like a fantasy. Mountains, trees, forests, everybody speaking in one language. And then I met Andile. Andy Bafo. I don't know if Andile MT. Bro, where are you, man? I hope you're still alive, Treasy. Andile MT went by Treasy on Facebook. And yeah, man, like I have not heard from him for so many years. The last things he posted there was when he was still coming into awareness of the secret societies like the Illuminati and the Freemasons, and that's like a key moment in learning, in one's education and development as a spiritual being, because when you unlock information like the Illuminati and the Freemasons, you have a choice to make. You can either ignore and dismiss the conspiracy truth in the conspiracy theory you found, because there will be some truth. There'll be a lot of truth to what you will find. It's what's gonna keep you watching. And then maybe there might be some inaccuracies, and that's why we're calling it a theory. But most of the time, at least back in the day, conspiracy theories were conspiracy theories. But right now, we're just dealing in conspiracy fact, because we are living in an Orwellian nightmare, essentially, where the books are there, the information is there. It's just that the minds have been conditioned to not engage with it. Like, remember when I said I am neurodivergent? Everybody should be neurodivergent, bruv. This neurotypical frame that is the standard for normalcy. Hey, something is wrong with that thing, dog. But yeah, back to the story. 2006, we go to Mount Fletcher. It's awesome. It's fantastic. Me to Andy. So that's how I got into secret societies. Andy, we make this connection, brotherhood-like connection. I had never had like a friend I could become close enough with to rival the bond of family, because in a township setup, my gran had taught us to keep to ourselves. Not to keep to ourselves in the sense that I didn't play with other kids, but yeah, man, my friends were my friends. They were not my grandma's friends, and my grandma's friends were my grandma's friends. They were not my friends. You know, that type of setup. So the friends I had were from like other houses down the street, but because the relations with my family and that family were not that close, even my friendship with that individual would not be as deep as it can be. So when I met Andile, who was staying with my grandmother, my grandma's sister-in-law, like my grandfather's sister, had adopted to Andile, and so Andy was around my age group, and yeah, man, we played games. He showed me around. Had cool energy. I hope you're alive, man. If you're alive, reach out. Let's meet up, bro. Let's meet up. If it happens that you joined some weird secret societies during your investigations, It's okay, broski. I will break you out of it. So the secrets that they hold you with, they assume a fundamental ignorance as to the nature of reality. But yeah, there's meta consciousness, fam. So I'll give you meta consciousness and we'll break you out of it, whatever it is. So don't be afraid to reach out because you think you're protecting me from the entities that you've now associated yourself with. Don't worry, I'm good. I have been studying with the ancients, so I'm familiar with these things. So just hit me up if you're still alive, Andy. And if you're not, your spirit will come. Unless if somebody took it already. Yeah, unless if somebody took it. But if you wanna be free from there, you will let me know. Sorry to freak the Christians out. Just ignore that for now. We'll explain it some other day in terms of how your brain functions. So for now, I just want to get these things out. So it's not really about making it make sense for you, Christian. Everybody else should be able to understand though, because this is just logic surfing, essentially, through memory. So, yeah, we went here. Eastern Cape was awesome. Made my first best friend that is closer than family, pretty much a friend closer than blood. I guess this was prophetic of the relationship, the friendship I would have with Siabulela Samente in 2015, 16, 17 until now, pretty much, essentially, because Sia's also a friend who became closer than any family member currently is. Like, I am, as far as understanding, as far as shared experience, shared philosophy, shared even his pathway, fam, is similar to my pathway, even though he's from his own family. Like, we'll get to the pathways part later on. By the way, I gave you my birthday, assuming that some of you will do some numerology things to it. Maybe I'll do an episode myself after we cover the full timeline or through externalizations, and then we can do the numbers here afterwards. So we go, we have fun, we come back. I've really skipped over so the aim of this externalization sessions was to literally lay out everything I have been throughout time. But given the rapid developments that have happened this January, I will not be able to do that. Maybe I'll come back in some years and I'll redo externalization part 2, or maybe I'll probably add onto it. There'll be subparts 2B where I'm doing an in-depth exploration of the trip to Mount Fletcher, the trip at Mount Fletcher, because the repeat trip, which happened in 2007, also happened in December. But when it happened, it wasn't fantastical anymore. This time there was just chores, farms. There weren't as many visits. Because the first time around, we were taken on tours. We went to Mount Fletcher at Tsepong, which was the house. Okay, let's not describe it further than that. From my grandmother's house at Tsepong, we went to Patlazana, which was about 10 to 15 minute drive away. About 30 maybe. Went there, visited some family, went to Mbofu, which was like deep into like rural country now. Not rural in the sense that poor, but rural in the sense that you might struggle for cell phone network. It's the Bundus, yeah. I went deep into the Bundus, and it was pretty dope. That's where I met the people who knew my grandpa. That's where I met the people who recognized me, even though they'd never met me. Yeah, overall, they had a pretty good time. Second year, there were just a lot of chores. It felt like we went there to be slave labor. Essentially, the first trip in 2006 felt like we were royalty, and then the second trip was, yeah, far from royalty, fam. Far from royalty, far from it. So yeah, Fantasyland no more. And then 2008, we went back just to see, you know, is it what was it, an era? 2007, is this really how it be? Because, you know, we went 2006 for the first time and honeymoon phase. 2007, it's just work. 2008, also work. So after 2008 was the family gathering. My gosh. So I don't know. Again, I don't know how many family gatherings they had prior to us forcing a visit in 2006, but in 2008 they had one, and the one they had in 2008, stories were told of the previous one. So it seemed they had been having family gatherings without inviting us Gauteng people. Funny enough, some of my uncles were there. Not funny enough, some of my uncles were raised by my grandma's sister-in-law, like my grandpa's sister. So yeah, that's pretty much the so Eastern Cape will come back to once we discuss telepathy. I think that's what's gonna unlock most of the stories. We'll see. Okay, we'll stop here at 2007 with the repeat trip to Mount Fletcher. That leaves us with 13 years. Nope. With 17 years to cover. So do join for Externalization Part 3. Thank you for being with us today. May peace be upon you. I'll just do some updates now on what has been happening this January. Then it'll make sense, the things I was sort of hinting at. Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Should I tell you? Oh yeah, I should, because you might not be watching the other videos. So if it happens that you're just watching this video alone, I am Yahweh, meaning I am that which I choose to be. Shalom Aleichem. Yahweh Shalom Aleichem. I am, peace be upon you. I am Xolani. Ne? And I used to be bound by not bound, I used to be trapped. Trapped is the right word, because binding is something else. I used to be trapped, enslaved by confusion, that arose from trying to fit my understanding of the true God to the scripture's description of the true God. You see, neurotypical people, when they hear the word for the first time, I reckon they don't have a notion of God. It's like literally the first time they are hearing of it. Whereas I suspect that neurodivergents like myself, I knew from the get-go that God was omnipresent, as in he was everywhere all at once, because I couldn't be everywhere all at once. He knew everything all at once because I couldn't know everything all at once. That was before I did psychedelics, by the way. I've seen the human body can sustain that type of consciousness for a little while, but it can. So I've glimpsed omniscience, and I know God is omniscient. I've glimpsed omnipresence. I know God is omnipresent, and he's all powerful because as a limited human being with a limited form, like as a spirit wearing this type of flesh with the limitations it has, definitely not going to be all powerful. But there are some powers built into this form which are also which are cool and worth exploring, which we will explore as a matter of course. So it's okay. We have an awesome whatever it is that you're doing right now. And then I'll see you on externalization part 3 or in any other video that you're gonna watch. But essentially what I wanted to tell you was I no longer am constrained by the Yahweh frame. Like I can see Yahweh beyond the anthropomorphization that has led to him being misinterpreted and exploited. Do you understand? There is God, the true God, who's not really concerned about names and whatnot. He's constantly here. He's here right now. He's talking to you through me, and he will talk to me through me as I'm talking to you, which is doing. He's been doing it. So that's the power of the omniscient one and the omnipresent and the omnipotent one. That is what the word Yahweh is supposed to describe. Yahweh is not supposed to point to a jealous God. Aibo, how can you be jealous and omnipresent and omniscient and omnipotent? Bese wena you're jealous. But again, we'll get to those things as a matter of course. I just wanted to add for you who may have watched this 1 hour 43 minutes and has no intention of watching the other ones, which may cover these details in depth. But that's to say, I can read Yahweh's texts and get benefit from them. When I used to be afraid, I used to call on Yeshua. Like if I'd felt an energy I didn't understand, I'd call on Yeshua and the energy would dissipate. Ever since breaking out of, like ever since not being able to reinsert my blinders anymore. You see, Christianity is a lot of willful ignorance if you are an analytical person, and your willful ignorance, once it becomes automated, then you are stuck in it for life. So many Christians are willfully ignorant of the things that show them that that book isn't sola scriptura. Like, just history alone tells you that book is not sola scriptura. Constantine, when he was instituting the Council of Nicaea, had agendas for the kingdom. The Roman See needed to be ruled, and it needed to be ruled in a way that would protect the empire from this newfound church power. So verses had to be inserted there to make people to obey their masters, to make people to pray for their political leaders, to not depose them, to not do a coup d'etat, to not tell them that, now fam, this ain't working, let's just freestyle it based on the fact that we are and we know what's right and what's wrong, given the knowledge we've accumulated as a society, as a civilization, as a peoples. Like, this current era has easier access to information than most. If I was born at a different time, I would have had to go physically to those temples that have "Know Thyself" written at the top of the gate. I would have needed to go to one of those, and not one of those actually. I needed to go to all of them for me to be as I am now. Because I've learned from many schools which I have not physically visited. I've never been to Japan, yet I know Seiki Jutsu, non-subtle energy medicine, very beautiful things, similar to the energy medicine of the Kweklam. I don't know how to pronounce it. I don't want to pronounce it until I meet someone who's Kweklam, who's gonna teach me how to pronounce the word for energy in Kweklam. But they do have something like Seiki Jutsu, which allows non-subtle manipulation of energy. Okay, as in, it's fine. So this was just to tease you, to show you that next time when I continue with part 3, I'll just start at 2008 and we'll go from there. But the last bit of this externalization part 2 was to say the reason I'm externalizing all of these is because I need to make space. So I'm gonna stop telling some of these stories. Not that I'm gonna stop telling some of these stories, but as I focus on other aspects of my reality fractal, I want there to be an access point to this information still for those who might be at a point in their journey where they need the information phrased in this way. The point where I'm at now in my reality frame is when I was a child watching Dragon Ball Z, I wished Chi was true. I wished Saiyans existed, and low-key in my heart I was like, Goku is a nigga. Because like, what do you mean he has a tail? He eats a lot. He is innocent. A pure soul. Ngoni Lord. Abangoni. The ones who don't sin. Just pure. So yeah, I watched Dragon Ball Z hoping that the powers were real, but given the occult understanding I have now, I know for a fact Chi exists. I exuded different emanations calibrated by different processes, from meditations to plants to recitations, and yeah, as in, this is enough now. It's becoming too much. Thank you very much for joining us, and it's been awesome, man. Welcome to February. Let's first do a recap of January, and then we'll do some projections for February. Peace be upon you, sis. Peace. Shalom Aleichem.